I can discuss what is illustration. You're probably here because you like to draw and paint. I remember when I was a young kid growing up on East 8 Mile in Detroit. I'm a Detroit kid. I liked comic books, and I was trying to figure out, would I be interested in animation or illustration? And what I've come to figure out is that illustration is really about the drawing and painting and problem solving for commercial clients that help tell their stories or help push a certain narrative. And if there's people interested in animation, and then Oliver would have that background as well, animation really works on the pipeline and the production of the assets to make the animation. So there's a bit of a difference between the two, but an illustration, it's the drawing and the painting of particularly the full pictures. And that's not the perfect definition, but hopefully it gets the conversation started, and we'll clarify it a bit as we go. So this is our Avengers here. These are all the people you will see the most. We're all full-time in the department. And we also have a full-on team of wonderful adjunct faculty too. But as far as this list, Don is our chair. He's fantastic. He's been here for a while. He has a substantial background in editorial. He's one of the Midwest's biggest printmakers. He has, I don't know how many presses, maybe 20 presses or so. He designed the Olympic medal. He has gallery shows all the time. And for a chair to be, honestly, to be that participatory still in the industry can be rare in some cases. So that's really great. Gil has been here the longest. He has a background in New York. He's as New York as it gets. So he's really brings that old school editorial and freelance personality into the mix. And he continues to work in publishing. And I think he regularly shows his experimental pieces in gallery. Eric is pretty classic illustration. He did a lot of video game covers and commercial art in the 90s. If you had a Sega Genesis or Super Nintendo, which you guys definitely didn't when they were around, but
I did.
yes. Eric created a lot of the box art for that. And since we're getting into some of the nuance of things, Betsy, do you want to give just a little background on the work you do?
Yeah, sure. So prior to coming to CCS, I spent about 10 years working at various animation studios in the greater Los Angeles area. I actually graduated from college with Francis and ended up completing that animation major that I know he started out in. And I sort of took my career in a little bit of a different path, but I also kind of made that same discovery that even though I wanted to be in animation, what I really enjoyed about making art was the drawing and the painting. So I sort of carved a path for myself where I get to draw and paint digitally and help make animated projects, but it's other artists that are part of the same team who are the ones who actually make it move around and make it into a 3D model and those kinds of things. But yeah, and I'm glad to be here.
And myself, and thanks, Betsy. I'm from here. I'm a local kid. Actually, fun story, a little hero's journey, I suppose, is I applied to CCS. Gil would have been my chair, and I didn't really receive any scholarship, so I couldn't make it back then. So most people here probably were more qualified to go to art school than I was. So I had a big journey, but it ended up working out well, and now I teach, right? Kind of fun. But anyways, my background is I started in animation major, switched to illustration. I bounced around in a lot of industries, from editorial and gallery and comics to eventually land in publishing, which is my focal point now, even though I still do some comic work here and there. But I put out a book called Jazz Day a couple years back, and then another book with Neil Gaiman, Anansi Boys with Folio Society. And now I'm working on my own book and sort of entertaining new projects. So that's my background. And Lauren, I'm not sure if you just wanted to talk a little about your origin story.
Oh, sure. I I graduated from CCS in 2012 from the illustration department. And I found myself just still loving CCS, and I got into the admin side, and I've been here ever since in different roles at the college.
And you're really going crazy with the ceramics, right? You're doing a lot of
Yeah.
ceramic.
So most recently in the last few years, I've been doing a lot of ceramic art.
Awesome.
She's very good.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And everyone, maybe you aren't interested in our backgrounds, but the reason we're taking a little time to do that is art is subjective to a point. So it's very helpful to know the background that your instructors are bringing to classes. And if you think about it, everyone has a Yoda to some extent, but you're going to want to know where they come from, because if you want to know Viz Dev, you're going to go to Betsy. If you want publishing, you might come to me or Gil or Betsy. You also have publishing background. Or if you want to go to printmaking, go to Don, etc. So really knowing where we come from is important. And that was something that took me a while to figure out in art school, to know who's the right people to approach. So anyways, here are a number of areas of focus. And I'm going to spend a moment on this section because the best thing about illustration is it's very broad. The most challenging thing about illustration is it's very broad. And we encounter those conversations with students a lot where they're like, yes, I do like to draw and paint, but I like 20 different styles, and 20 every day I change the direction I want to go. And that we're all aware of that as instructors, and we try to offer courses and curate the curriculum and offer mentorship so that we can help you in that journey to figure out what section of illustration you might want to pursue. So as a result, we created these areas of focus, which are listed right here. So one of them is entertainment and visual development illustration. Every generation has we'll say every generation of new illustrators has a genre that is really popular. When I was in school, comics were particularly big. The newest generation seems to be very, 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 very excited about visual development. There's just a lot of young folks that are interested in that, and we do recognize that. And Betsy can definitely talk towards that side of the industry. She's very accomplished in it. But anyways, that's an avenue that a student can pursue. Then we have publishing illustration. We look at this section, not necessarily just publishing, but potentially editorial too. It's just really the classic illustration model where, might be someone that's really into Norman Rockwell, or, the idea of doing illustration for magazines and that type of stuff. Next, absolutely recognize and are about to offer even more classes in comics and sequential illustration. And students that pursue that, of course, are going to be interested in not just single images, but presenting a number of images, one after each other, to tell a story. And they're going to have to consider a lot of elements that folks in the entertainment disciplines are going to care about, like staging and cinematography and all those type of things. Lifestyle and licensing illustration tends to be niche, and maybe I'm not sure how many folks are going to come into CCS saying, I want to be a licensing illustrator. It's usually something that you discover over time, but there is a lot of exciting stuff that you can do, like surface design and packaging design and fashion and all sorts of things like that. And actually licensing is probably one of the biggest markets, because everything is licensed. You go to a store, there's a lot of licensed stuff. And then finally, there's illustrator as gallery artists. That could also be considered or also be known as an independent artist that sells directly to consumer. We are aware and recognize that social media and contemporary illustration offers a lot of opportunities for that. And we can talk to that pursuit with the appropriate amount of caution in starting a journey towards that end. But we feel that with a variety of these areas of focus, summarize what a illustrator in 2022 can pursue. And there's some really niche markets that are probably gonna start to arise, like we have AI and we have virtual reality and all these things that are changing the game. So we really make efforts to stay on top of those things. And as they come about, we want our students to have access to the tools to do that. So before we go any further, I think Betsy has some comments she wants to give on the curriculum and what a student can expect in their 4 years in the illustration major.
Yeah, thanks, Francis. So, as you can see based on what Francis just went through, there's a whole lot of things that you can do with illustration, but they all hinge on being able to draw and paint and compose images really, really well. So for the first 2 years in the illustration department, you will really it's like going to the gym. You're building up those skills to draw, paint, and compose pictures. You'll focus on figure drawing, on still lifes, on, color theory, perspective, all of those really important foundation items that you need to be a successful illustrator. And in fact, it's funny because even in the upper levels, whenever something isn't working right in an image, it always comes back to one of those foundational things that we focus on for the first 2 years. But once you're through those first 2 years, your junior and senior year really open up to give you a lot of opportunity to explore. So if you're someone who right now at this very moment knows exactly what you want to do, you can absolutely just run with it, and you'll be able to take classes that fit into elective spots that will help you reach your goal. But if you're also a person who isn't quite sure what you want to do now, and you just know that you love drawing and painting, you'll also have the opportunity in those upper years to try a number of different things and sort of discover where it is exactly you fit into a final market. I think your junior and senior year are really exciting because this is something that CCS does that I don't know of another art school doing, which maybe they do and I just don't know. But there's a class called Junior Studio and then a class called Senior Studio. And in Junior and Senior Studio, you essentially build out a project proposal that targets a certain market. So whether that's entertainment art and visual development, publishing, illustration, comics, lifestyle, or gallery work, you build up a proposal to create a project that fits into one of those markets, and your instructor helps coach you through that. So no matter what it is you ultimately want to pursue, you'll have the space and the time to build a portfolio for that. And then with sort of our, as Francis put it, Avengers style faculty members who all sort of come from different places and different markets within the illustration industry, you will absolutely have someone there who is likely currently working in that field who can help advise you and give you the most realistic and best advice that they can. And in addition to all of those classes, we also in your senior year give you a lot of business practice tips. So tips on how to build a portfolio, tips on how to contact art directors and recruiters and get your contact information out there, how to do taxes, all of that really stuff that sounds really boring probably right now, but stuff that I think is really essential to make you a successful person outside of CCS. And
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Betsy. And I'm putting a note out there to the group that the business side is something we take very seriously. And that's not marketing talk. Like personally, I'm very passionate about that because it tends and trends to be one of the most challenging areas in art education. And because illustration is so broad, it can be challenging to get the information to the student. And we know art school is not cheap, and we want to ensure that students have the art, but also this awareness and savvy to succeed in that industry. And Betsy teaches junior studio, I teach senior studio. So we're intimately working with the students to solve that. So I mentioned I want to make this note. If we have time near the end and there's interest, I can take you into my senior studio Canvas page, which is where we handle everything, and show you how the projects are organized and even perhaps give some insight into like the job opportunities, the lectures on taxes, all those type of things that can put the money where my mouth is, and kind of show those type of things. And because that I think we would be doing a disservice if we just taught you to draw and paint. Here's how to draw, here's how to paint, here's how to live a great life with that ability. So I can spend too long talking about that, so I am going to stop. But near the end, if anyone's interested, we can definitely do that. So moving forward, we've done a lot of talking, so let's look at some art, right? That's what we're here to do. So we have just some samples of student work created in some of these disciplines, or not so much disciplines, areas of focus that I mentioned. So this student graduated a bit ago, and he's working on backgrounds for Castlevania at Powerhouse Animation. This is Corey, and he's doing color design on Rick and Morty. And I think it's cool that these were put next to each other, because the range of realism to hyper stylized exists, right? And these are both very legitimate routes to take in entertainment and viz dev.
Both are very employable.
Yes. I mean, since this is a super expertise of yours, Betsy, and I'm almost sure there's a good group of people here that are interested in this pursuit, do you have any comments on going through the illustration major and wanting to pursue this type of stuff?
Yeah, I think a common question that at least I hear, and I'm sure you probably hear as well, Francis and Lauren and Oliver, is just, if I'm interested in animation, should I pursue entertainment art or should I pursue illustration? And both are great majors, and we have a lot of cross enrollment with our students between the two. But the general answer is, if you like drawing and painting, I personally think you'll be happier in illustration than you would be in EA. EA is about making all of those things move, and about actually building those assets and doing 3D lighting and all of those things. And those are really important roles for artists to have. And I think the people that do them are incredible and amazing. But if you're someone whose true love is drawing and painting, that might not be exactly what you're looking for. But in Viz Dev, you're designing characters, you're designing environments, you're designing props, you're doing lighting keys, which are just quick little thumbnail sized paintings to send off to other artists who will build those things later.
Yeah, and like, just for instance, in Senior Studio right now, the Netflix, and there's my dog, hopefully she behaves. This Friday, the Netflix internship, I think for the Viz Dev position, is due. So we have a whole bunch of students that are applying and preparing their ports for that.
Yes.
And just we had Matt Ulisny, and last week I worked with him a lot, and he just got a job at That Game Studio. Do you know that studio, Betsy? I know they work on big games. I'm not a video game guy, but
oh gosh, I don't know. I hadn't heard, but good for him.
yeah, it's a concept position. It's really cool. But
Yeah, that's awesome.
So we have publishing, illustration. These are very much in the aesthetic that's contemporary and popular, which is like the flat semi-animation influence aesthetic. And this is definitely done. There's also, oh no, my dog might bark. Betsy, I might pass this to you in a second.
That's okay.
We also have the more traditional experimental side of things, which is something I really enjoy on the publishing side. But publishing exists in books, and actually the book market is growing quite a bit, especially in kids books, which is very exciting. We specifically have a kids books class, because if you think about it, a lot of new kids born in the last couple of years, their parents want to get them away from a screen, so they're buying them a book. So publishing, illustration. I'm going to pass this next one to Betsy while my barking dog gets taken care of. So I'll be right back. So maybe Betsy, if you want to talk about
no problem. Yeah. So comics and sequential illustration. So I think comics are kind of having a moment again. I know Francis said it was really big when we were going through college, but I think it's big again. And we're actually in the biggest graphic novel boom, at least in the US. that we've had in a very long time, because I think major big five publishers, which is like Penguin Random House, many others, but sort of the big five publishing houses have realized that, people who are not into superheroes still enjoy reading comics. No hate to Cape Comics if that's your thing. I think they're great. Obviously, they're very successful. That's why we have all of the Marvel properties that we have, is because people love superheroes and comics. But there's lots of room for lots of different styles and lots of different types of stories in comics. And we're seeing that as a growing market and something that students are really, really interested in. So I believe that this coming fall, we're running a comics and graphic novel class again. Students themselves recently organized a comics club, and it's actually been really amazing, the stuff that they've been doing just for fun. And they meet once or twice a week and just do really fantastic stuff. And we have a senior right now who, for his final project, is doing an entire graphic novel all by himself, which is a ton of work. I think it's going to be over 80 pages or something like that. But that's definitely something that you can pursue at CCS, and something that we have a lot of great representation for. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Betsy. I'm back. I have my
Okay.
culprit here. Yeah, I heard you mention Sean Peacock. He's definitely doing
Yes.
great stuff. Check him out online. All Sorrows. I think he's going to be doing big things in the industry.
I think so too.
Lifestyle and licensing illustration. So in this piece specifically, this is Brooke Hitchcock. Now she's very interesting in that she's about 4 years ago, and she was really interested in fashion work and doing pieces like this, almost fashion illustration, I'd call this. But amidst that, she recognized she really liked patterns in general. And her classmate, Sheila Nicolin, they got a job at Ardman. And Ardman, I think, is in Sterling Heights, Farmington Hills, Michigan, somewhere like that. If you're not from the area, it's, maybe 20 minutes, half hour north of Detroit. And Ardman does all the patterns for Walmart, or a lot of them. So someone like Brooke, her 9 to 5 is she does those patterns and surface design, and gets really experimental. Sometimes she'll do watercolors, sometimes she'll do digital, etc. So if you sat on a cushion from Walmart, she probably did the pattern for it. And then outside of work, then she'll do fashion illustrations. And I know she went to a very bougie mall called Somerset Mall in the Metro Detroit area that has Gucci and LV and all these places. And they'll ask her to come and like on a really VIP day, she'll sit there and she'll do portraits of people like in the fashion aesthetic, etc. We have a current student, Miriam, and she was just she's hired full-time upon graduation at Louis Vuitton. Forget her exact title, but she's going to work full-time at Louis Vuitton at the same mall, in store, and she's going to customize all of the cases, which is a very high-end job for a student to have before graduation. And then the idea of licensing is the act of creating imagery that large companies purchase the rights to and reproduce it all over the place. That's very broad what that can mean. That can be pretty just classic illustration. That can be pattern. That can be a range of things. But for someone to do that, if you have a good business sense and you are a good people person, you can be very, 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 very successful.
Yes, you can be
doing
very
licensing.
wealthy if you do it
Yes,
right.
absolutely. Illustrator as gallery artist. So this is Shoko Ashita. And she's had a lot of successes. She had some work at Gallery Nucleus, a lot around town. And she's also done really well on social media. Now we're really careful how we talk about social media because it's equally good and bad, but it is a tool. And like any tool, we have a lot of resources to pursue it. And Shoko has been able to leverage her social media following, along with, I think, is it Kelsey Beckett, I think is the name, into a pretty lucrative career exhibiting in galleries and also selling prints and pieces to people directly. This is something that I play with a lot. I've managed to make a bit of a following over the years. And literally right now, I'm talking to a collector tomorrow, I think, that's buying 32 pieces. Just for me is crazy. So anyways, so there's definitely opportunities there, but similar to licensing, being aware of how to navigate, and this is for all freelance-esque work, even studio folks, being able to navigate these industries like a small business is really integral, because you are. And I tell all my students, you're opening a pizza shop, and your pizza is your art, and you have to let people know how good your pizza is and where to get your pizza and when you're available, and you have to do a bit of an investment into it and all these type of things. And that's what we try to help you do. And if you're a gallery artist, why do they want to go to your pizza shop opening? You know, those type of things. So those are the range of pursuits. So I think with these, and let me look at the time because we want to open Q&A pretty soon. These slides just go over some of our facilities. So I'm proud of our facilities in that they accommodate the range of traditional and digital pursuits, and even more so in the coming semesters. So we have 2 figure rooms. We have a perspective room full of light tables. We have a number of computer labs in our floor and across the campus that have a number of Cintiqs, computers that you can draw on top of. I know there's more developments on what our department can do with other technologies that I would probably get a stern looking at if I completely announced, but we're developing a lot of those things too. So in the coming months, and especially if folks come next semester, I think we'll be able to make those announcements on some of the really state-of-the-art tech that we're bringing into into the department. I do want to mention that seniors have access to senior studios where they can work throughout the day, their own space that, they can really do their thing. And if you think about it, I mean, it's a window out to Midtown Detroit in your own spot. That's pretty cool. Work on your really large paintings. And since I'm just, I guess, on that topic, I think it's relevant to mention we get a lot of questions from young people like, well, can I do digital or can I do traditional, that type of stuff? And it doesn't matter. I'm not saying we don't think either are more important than the other, but it's just a tool. What matters is how successful your image solves the pictorial problem. So we were going to give you a wealth of information on how to do traditional painting, and this is how you carve a block for printmaking, and this is how you smudge an edge on charcoal, all the old school stuff that the old classic illustrators would be proud that we're teaching. But at the same time, we're going to talk about here's how you use Procreate and Clip Studio Pro and Photoshop, and how you use digital perspective grids. And I think it would be really cool, especially for young folks, maybe if I alley-oop it over to Betsy to talk about what happens in her future illustration class.
Yeah, so this is a newer class that CCS has started teaching. Actually, I think the first semester we taught it was the first semester that I taught with CCS. And basically it evolved out of a need for illustration students to have a really solid overview of all of the different things that are emerging for illustration markets. So I helped write the class along with a few of our other adjunct faculty, and it's continuing to evolve as we continue teaching it. But in that class, we introduce our seniors to a little bit of animation tools, because you're starting to see things like editorial illustration that includes motion or elements of motion in it. So like animated GIFs, basically. So we'll give you a really solid understanding of all the many things you can do with that. You get a very basic overview of Blender, which is sort of like Maya, but a totally free license that you can download anytime, anywhere. So we give our students a little bit of 3D literacy. And then one of the newer things that's actually happening this semester for real for the first time is we've partnered with a company called Gravity Sketch, which is a virtual reality sketching application, which is super far future stuff. There's not a ton of super current markets for that, but the idea behind it is we want to help our students have the ability to continue to adapt as technology continues to change over time, which it inevitably will. But it's really exciting because Gravity Sketch has given the illustration department specifically headsets for virtual reality headsets that students can keep for the whole semester and work in them and do projects in them, and then just get really comfortable and have those things for their portfolio. And then they return it at the end of the semester, but you'll have access to that. And I imagine that that will only continue to grow over time. So yeah, that's a new exciting thing that we have going, in addition to all of the other new exciting things that we have going. So it's a good time.
Yeah, and what's neat is that while students are in VR world with their goggles on next door, it might be in my class and a mixed media class, and we're talking about how to start with the pencil sketch and then seal that with acrylic and then do a gouache wash of warm to cool that we then pull out and then seal with lacquer spray matte and then do an oil wash to pull out again to scan in digitally and tighten it up. All traditional. And it's
Yeah.
all legit, right? And that's going to be your journey, is finding where in that niche you exist, which is pretty fun, you know. So just more shots of the facilities. This was actually during one of my classes a couple of years back. It's a figure classroom, you know. I think illustration programs need to have a lot of figure classes. I will die on that idea, because let's face it, one of your primary subject matters is a figure. There's other things to draw, environments, animals, etc. But a lot of illustrators hang their hat. Can you draw a figure well? It's a very important task. So we have amongst the country, I have checked some of the most figure classes that you could take. So you got figure 1, figure 2, which is figure painting. You got anatomy. Then you got structural figure. Then you got advanced costume figure. Then you have the elective of illusionist painting. Then you can take gesture in the EA department. There's a lot of figures. There's Scarab Club across the way. There's a lot of figure you can take. And I usually tell freshmen, take as many of those classes as you can, because good figure drawing just equals good drawing. And you're probably here because you want to draw. So more virtual stations, some Cintiqs. I believe this might be Senior Studio. I'm not completely sure, but Senior Studio looks like that if it's not. There's definitely community engagement and involvement. There's sponsored projects that happen intermittently. Like right now, a class is designing the poster for the Detroit Grand Prix. The Illustration Icon Conference was hosted in Detroit. Me and Don, our chair, were able to host some students to New York Comic Con. We all flew to Comic Con. There's conversations, maybe we can make that happen with Lightbox, which is the #1 like entertainment illustration conference that me and Betsy participate in. Hopefully maybe we can get some students out there. We regularly have a lot of visiting artists, both virtually and in person. Like we have Sheila Nicolin, who I mentioned earlier, coming in a bit, Sam Weber, all these excellent people.
Sorry, I just want to add on one more really cool sponsored project. Last semester, Dawn taught a class that was a mural design class, and the student, it was with a client on this parking garage in downtown Detroit. It's like in a really prime real estate spot. And in this class of select students, I think there was like a selection process to get into the class, but from there, the students were literally working directly with the client. So they would present sketches, and the whole semester was students just kind of refining their sketches. And at the end, the client chose their favorite, and every student that took the class, I think, got paid for their work. And then the student who was chosen had their painting is going to be put up on the side of that parking garage in downtown Detroit for many years to come. So it's a really cool legacy that she gets to leave on Detroit.
Yeah, that was a cool one. And just being in Detroit, Detroit's one of the top mural places in the country, I would say for sure. You got Miami, Philly's real big, LA, Detroit. I mean, we're right up there. Think about it. Detroit's humongous landmass wise, and there's a million buildings. So it's ideal for murals.
Yeah.
Personally, you can't find me going that high, but there's a lot of people that are into that, and that's great. So I think we're getting near the end. I might let someone better suited talk about this slide, but I'll wrap up my side of things really fast. This mentions mentorship. I think this is unique to CCS and how hard we emphasize this. I can at least speak to my art school experience, and you had class and that was it for the most part. And in the majors, it shifted a little bit, but I think I've been struck by how CCS is structured to have office hours that are used. I could, I noticed Betsy and myself are usually very booked. And that's good because having the one-on-one conversations about, hey, I like all these things, what direction should I go, from someone in that industry? I'm struggling with time management, or is there artists you should suggest? And please come to me with that question. That's my favorite. Etc. Those one-on-one conversations, I'm not marketing our department. I genuinely think that's some of the biggest assets that we have for you. And like CCS across the board emphasizes mentorship, but I'm just reiterating the fact that in our department, we have very published office hours. We book it through Calendly. We'll be there, we'll chat. I have one student that booked every Thursday throughout the semester. Another student booked every lunch on Monday for the rest of the semester. As long as you're okay with me stuffing my face while we're talking at lunch, I think we're pretty effective in that mentorship. And if we don't know an answer, which we don't know everything, then we can point you to someone at the school that does. So I would be remiss. I don't want to glaze over this. I don't know if Lauren or Oliver had wanted to go over any of these aspects.
Yeah, so I won't take up too much time talking about the admissions process, just because I'm sure there's going to be some questions to answer, and I don't want to keep you guys too late tonight. But just for the most part, so right now we are past all of our primary deadlines for the admissions process for the fall of 2022. However, we are still accepting applications on a rolling basis. So if you're interested in the fall of 2022 and you haven't finished your application yet, there's definitely still time to get that in. And don't hesitate to reach out to myself or any of the other admissions counselors. I'm going to be posting some links in the chat in just a couple minutes. That'll help get you to make appointments with us, make appointments with me, or just generally reach out. And then if you're interested in the fall of 2023 or et cetera, say you're a junior in high school still, all you need to worry about for our application is your portfolio. We look for 8 to 12 pieces of your best work, and then your high school transcript or your college transcript if you have attended any years of a community college or another university. We don't require test scores. We don't require letters of recommendation or anything like that. Just your GPA, just your transcript, or just your portfolio. Other than that, it's just like a free application online. So it's pretty simple. It's really straightforward.